Yeah.
There were a couple. One wasn't, who joined me for a while. He was a psychiatrist. Unfortunately, he's now dead. But he feared being imprisoned, and he did spend a night in jail helping us. Both of us went to prison, jail. So that physician came forward and worked with us wholeheartedly, a psychiatrist. So we knew that the patients we dealt with were mentally sound. And some have sent me secret little notes in restaurants and things saying, keep up the good work. And they come to me and whisper to me in a line sometime, and we're behind you, keep going. In prison they would do it. The nurses would whisper to me their support. Because you can't support it openly because you'll be an enemy of the society.
Yeah.
See?
Did that kind of thing frustrate you? Did you just think if you guys would just speak with me on this?
Of course. But you can understand why they're afraid. They're afraid of consequences. That's how we're enslaved. You know, there are laws passed that you don't like.
Right.
You would hate prohibition, just like other people. How come you were prevented from drinking what you wanted to drink, which you had been drinking for years? How come suddenly it became a crime? Because some money interests or some tyrant running the country or some cabal wanted to make sure you felt enslaved. We are enslaved. Ninth Amendment is the only protection against it, and it's never been used.
And that mainly deals with individuals' rights.
Right. Saying any right not listed in the Constitution doesn't mean you can deny others that are retained by the people. In other words, you're born with them. You can't eliminate a right with a law. You can only prevent its being exercised.
So if it was up to you, we'd live free of these constraints,
Sure.
and individuals would just...
As long as you have consent, you cannot threaten or harm anybody else or any property. As long as you have the consent, there will be no crime, no matter what you do. You can kill them, murder them, no crime.
No crime at all.
Nope. He asked for it. He got what he asked for.
So in your way of looking at it, if somebody said, I'm depressed and I don't want to live, or I lost my girlfriend and I don't want to live, you would give them the option also? Oh, you would not?
No, we have like every medical service, we go through with a diagnosis. We examine him. We have a psychiatrist examine him. We see, have you taken this treatment? Do you know about this treatment? Have you tried this? And they say, no, no, no. Well, there's things we can do, you know. So there's no need to end your life. But if he's been through all that and there's still suffering, there's only one option left. And he wants it. And he has a right to request it. I have the right to help him do it because that's the Ninth Amendment right. The law says you do that and you go to prison so no one uses it. That's how we're enslaved. You're more enslaved than you think you are. This is not a democracy. It's not a free country. Can't be free because we have no discipline. That's one. Two things Americans are lacking so they can't be totally free. Self-discipline and the, it's got a mental block now. What's the other one? Honesty.
Honesty. We won't be honest with ourselves.
There are two things missing in most Americans because they all lie. They cheat and lie to get ahead in money, make more money or do something, or revenge. Honesty, they're dishonest to themselves. They lie to themselves, and they are undisciplined. So any law, any constitutional amendment that gives you absolute rights, acknowledges your natural rights, won't work if you're undisciplined. See, animals don't have the problem we do. We say we're brains, we're thinking people. That's our problem. An animal probably doesn't do that. He's born with instincts. And in those instincts is the same kind of behavior in every generation, the same reaction toward other animals of their kind. Some fight among themselves, some kill each other, some eat each other. But animal behavior is predictable. Human behavior is not.
Do you feel like you relate to animals more than you do people? When you see the way animals behave, do you think that you model your behavior?
No, use that as an example.
Yeah.
put an animal in a cage, and what do? Do you change his behavior? No. He'll fight to get out. He'll growl. He'll make any noise he wants. A baby is a perfect example of absolute freedom. It wants to urinate anywhere, anytime. Doesn't matter. He's not afraid. The baby's not aware of consequences. You can't threaten a baby with prison or punishment to change him. You can't. Under a certain age, like 1 year. Take a baby of 8 months. It vomits over you. It does anything it wants. Anything. But that's an example of undisciplined behavior. But you can't blame the baby. It's not mature. Once you're mature, you must have discipline and honesty. A baby's honest. It's behaving the way it's driven to behave, by instinct.
Well, let's come back to a little bit of and I was curious about one thing too. You also had the families involved. Were you ever sued civilly by any of the families for? So all the families, not just the person themselves who went along with this, all the families were in favor.
We had consultations with everybody, family, with the patients themselves, with the friends of the family, friends of the victim, patient. We went through multiple consultations, made sure they got consultations from doctors that were needed. We got an extra opinion on their disease. We had a psychiatrist verify that they were mentally sound. We made sure that was like every medical procedure. That's what a doctor's for. He knows what to do and how to do it, who to call in to help him. This is not a personal decision by one person. In fact, there should be 2 panels of doctors. 2 of them examine and investigate and analyze the person's life and situation. The second panel will pick 1 of the 3 to do the actual euthanasia. That way there can be no conflict.
So at the time you did this, the people wanted it, the families wanted it, there was no civil suits. Any suits that came to you were against the state. You had a terrific lawyer, Jeffrey Feiger, who...
he was self-serving.
Yeah, but he was also really a strong lawyer for you. You went 5-0.
Yes, but that wasn't changing much, was it?
So your problem was not so much that you were being found innocent, which was, I guess, Feiger's job.
I could have had that easily on the last. In fact, they had announced that they won't prosecute me anymore, because they realized that if they said that, I would do 1 or 2 or 3 more, but nobody else would do it. So we still would have the law. It still would be illegal. So I had to change that. That means I had to do something to get to the Supreme Court with my case. And the court said, we want a case with standing. I gave it to them. They lied. They didn't take the case.
So even though you were winning these cases with Feiger and it was all over the news, this was still frustrating for you.
I should not have had him in my first trial.
You didn't want him there at all?
No. Be convicted on a law that was only 5-year felony? I'd have been out in 2. As it is, I was in over 8. And I couldn't keep going over and over. They could have arrested me any time after that, despite what they said. And it wouldn't change anything, me going to prison or me getting arrested. I had to get this to the people who decide what's constitutional. And it's in the Constitution, the 9th Amendment. But the court never uses it. Never. It's never been used. Because that way they can manipulate the law the way they want to. Any right they can block. Any right. Like Patriot Act, Homeland Security, flagrant violation of civil rights. So what? You're slaves. You're scared of the consequences.
So you have these libertarian beliefs, and just you yourself getting off with Feiger was not enough for you. You need to change the law. You wanted to be in front of the Supreme Court.
I had to get to the Supreme Court. They announced deceitfully, the court is also a bunch of liars, besides being corrupt. They said, we want a case with standing by a doctor for a terminal case of a person with consent. So I gave it to them. See? But I did it in a way that they can't say, well, the jury would feel sorry for me, so that when they see the family that requested it, so they kept the family away. See? That way I knew they were out to get a conviction, which didn't bother me a bit. See? So that way, I'd end up convicted, go to state prison, you appeal to the state Supreme Court, they refused, go to the federal court, that circuit court, then go up through the system to the Supreme Court, which asked for the case of standing. They were lying, because they don't want to try this. Ninth Amendment never been used, because it says that no matter what right is listed in the Constitution, all the others belong to the people. And they don't want to validate that, because that destroys their power.
So when you went into prison, it also stopped the work that you were doing. I mean, at one point...
Yeah, who else would do it? They want to go to prison? They're scared. That's how they control you.
So they've got you in prison. And what was actually what they came up with? 8 years was...
Well, it was 10 to 25.
10 to 25.
I guess they felt ashamed, so that the first time they came up for parole, they had released me.
During that time that you were in prison, did you have any change of philosophy?
Two inmates, one guard and one inmate, were very definite in their opposition to me. And I found out that the guard was a Catholic. So what do you expect? The majority of them, almost all of them, inmates, supported me, and so did most of the guards. But they had to whisper it to me. The guards did. They get fired.
But there had to be somewhat of a depressing thing to have spent all this time. You're making this work. You've opened up the debate in this country, and now here you are in this little tiny room locked away from everything. That had to be a
well, the
shock
fact
to
that the debate had to be open showed that you were enslaved. They should have told you in school you had the Ninth Amendment. You ever hear about it?
No, it never came up.
I didn't either. I learned it when I was 70. Get that. I had to get to the age of 70 to learn that the Constitution says I have all my rights inborn. I was a law-abiding citizen, you know, and I knew this was a right that was necessary. I wanted it when I get there, and I think the patient deserved it. Well, anyway, that being in prison wasn't that tragic for me, because I knew I was not a criminal, and that made it much easier. See, if I had committed a real crime, I'd be remorseful, but I wasn't. I said, they're going to suffer in the future, because they know darn well they're wrong. They're wrong putting me in prison. They know it. See? Just like they knew Mandela was right, and they were wrong in South Africa. When they put him in prison, they knew that.
Do you see yourself as that type of person to
Of course.
Mandela?
It's in American history. I knew that. I said from the beginning, after the first case, somebody has to go to prison in this country before anything changes. That's history. Talking won't do it.
And that is something your attorney said, something Jeffrey Feiger didn't want to happen. He wanted to keep you on the outside.
Well, no, he did. It's not because he wanted to. I did it because I wanted to keep going and helping these patients who are suffering. I didn't care about the consequences. I said the first one would have been only a four-year felony or 5-year. I'd have been out in 2 years. You think I'd have stopped? No. They wouldn't stop until they got me in for a long sentence. I knew that. But I had to get to the Supreme Court. I learned about the Ninth Amendment waiting for trial once. I said, gee whiz, I had the right to do that all along. Then I realized how enslaved we are.
So do you resent, is this like one of the real disappointments of your life that you've never had a chance to argue this in front of the Supreme Court? Does it feel...
Or a good lawyer like my lawyer I have now argue in front of the Supreme Court. Because what could they say when it's there in black and white? James Madison insisted that we put in the Constitution, which he wrote, the Bill of Rights. He insisted on that because he said, we can't list every right. There are trillions of them. Name a right that we don't have, being born. Name a right.
The right to hurt other people.
Just so you don't hurt or threaten any other people or property without consent. That wipes out all the crimes. So you know when you do that, if I have gold in my pocket, why should I go to prison during the Depression? If I drank whiskey in the 30s or 40s, why should I go to prison? Because I drank whiskey. Don't you realize the magnitude of your enslavement? But you don't care because you're comfortable.
Do you see any countries out there that aren't living under this enslavement?
No,
you see it as a world
enslaved. They're tyrants everywhere.